It's summer.
Heat strokes.
Yeah. I had heat exhaustion once in my life.
Really?
Yeah, when I was a kid. I was in summer and I was bicycling, and it was just, middle of summer, and you don't, when you're a kid, you're dumb. You don't think about, oh, it may be too hot to like be doing what I'm doing. And I started like really kind of, going down, like getting dizzy and just like pouring sweat, just felt bad, headache. I didn't have heat stroke, like that's different as we'll talk about. But the topic that we're gonna go over is heat exhaustion and heat stroke. I actually wrote an article for one of the local papers about this last week or the week before, the Katy Trail Weekly. Do you guys ever read that Katy Trail Weekly? Probably not.
I think I've heard of it.
Yeah. I write a regular column in there. I've done it for like 2 years now.
That's cool.
Maybe I'm coming up on my 100th article. Actually, I write it every other week. But well, anyway, so August is almost here. I don't know about you guys. I love Texas, but I don't like August here.
Yeah.
It is like
hot.
unbearably hot.
This is my birthday month.
When's your birthday?
August 20th.
20th.
So is Avery's birthday is August 11th.
My wife's the 29th. Yeah. How old are you gonna be? Will you say how old are you gonna be?
35.
35.
Yeah.
You can run for like Senate or something, right? Or is it president? I can't remember.
Okay. You heard it here first.
We could use some new kids. Sarah announces her presidential candidacy live on top. Okay. Well, happy early birthday.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you guys have heard that there have been some record heat waves already this summer. It was in the news a couple weeks ago.
Man.
Yeah, which is why I was talking about this. And we actually got spared here in Texas. It was mostly out in California, Arizona, New Mexico. Like they got hit with some insanely high temperatures. And there actually have been dozens of deaths from the heat already this year in the United States. Which is pretty crazy because, we're just kind of we're in the thick of summer now. But when that was going on, it was still pretty early summer. So, I want to talk about heat exhaustion and heat stroke because these can happen. And they can definitely creep up on you, and understanding the symptoms is the biggest key to preventing it from getting on to heat stroke, which actually is a medical emergency and absolutely can kill you. So I want to talk about heat exhaustion first because this is far more common and it is less serious.
I bet I've had it.
Have you had it?
I'm sure I have. I work out in a AC-less gym in the summer.
You may have. Yeah, well, you got to be careful, because heat exhaustion, you can go straight to heat stroke in rare instances, but generally heat stroke, which is a medical emergency, is not followed, but preceded by. I was having a senior moment. I couldn't remember the word preceded. You guys feel free to help me out here if I lose my way. Preceded by heat exhaustion. And it's described as when the body overheats and it can't effectively cool itself. And our body has a lot of different ways that it cools us down. Sweating being the number one. Yeah. Right? When you sweat, the sweat evaporates off your skin and it cools you actually very, very effectively. Mm-hmm. So first thing I want to do is talk about the risks of heat exhaustion, which obviously the first one is going to be it's hot outside, extreme heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, extreme heat is going to be your biggest risk. This one is kind of interesting, and I didn't actually think about this, which I feel kind of dumb. High humidity.
Oh, yeah.
Because if it's humid outside...
It's hard to breathe when it's humid.
Right, and what it does is when it's really humid, it's harder for sweat to evaporate.
Yeah.
And the evaporation of sweat is what cools you down. So if you're in a high humid area, which Dallas is kind of middle of the road, it's slightly humid here, but not like Houston, which I don't know anyone would live in Houston. No offense to Houstonites, but... The humidity there is brutal.
No bueno. I hate it.
Have you been down to Houston in the summer?
Yeah, two of my sisters live there.
Yeah?
It's the worst.
Trey, Houston?
You said what you said, and I co-signed it.
That's very diplomatic of you, Trey.
And I co-signed it.
Diplomatic. High humidity.
You endorsed.
Yeah. It's not an endorsement. It's just a co-sign. So high humidity actually increases your risk because it's harder for you to sweat. Mm-hmm. So the other thing, in talking about sweating, if you're dehydrated. Mm-hmm. If you're dehydrated, it's harder for you to sweat. Your body's going to heat up faster. Intense physical activity, that's what got me. I was like racing around on my bicycle somewhere. And intense physical activity, which causes a lot of metabolism in your muscles, generates heat. Direct sunlight makes it worse than if you're not. Age extremes, infants or very young children and elderly cannot regulate their body temperature as well.
Yeah.
So those people are more at risk. This is kind of one I wasn't really say that I knew, is if you're accustomed to heat or not.
Yeah.
Like people who live in the heat have their bodies are more effective at cooling than people who are not accustomed to it.
Definitely.
Which is interesting, because I know with altitude, obviously you get acclimated to it. I didn't know like how your body, I may look this up just out of my own curiosity. How does your body change so that you cool?
Like how does it accommodate?
Like metabolically or histologically, how does your body change? Because like for altitude, what happens is you get more red blood cells, right? And that allows you to carry more oxygen when there's not as high oxygen content. I don't know how your body changes to allow more effective cooling. If you guys know this, I'd be super impressed because I have no clue. Any idea? No, don't feel bad.
I'm not sure.
It's interesting. I always find when I find something new, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know that. How does it work?
It like dehydrates the rest of your body. You have to like drink more water.
Maybe you hold the hydration better.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, like causes your body to retain more water.
Exactly. It may be something where you have less diuretic effect, like what is it, ADH, anti-diuretic hormone. That changes so that you hold fluid. That very well may be it. Alcohol consumption. Which dehydrates you and also affects your body to cool. And then finally, wearing non-breathable clothing. Yeah. Which is one that a lot of people don't think about. And one of the people that died, kind of close to me, was a motorcyclist, was wearing, the full
leather
gear and was in Death Valley and just basically overheated on the bike.
Oh my goodness.
So symptoms of heat exhaustion. We're still talking about heat exhaustion here. We're not in a stroke. Heat exhaustion, heavy sweating, weakness, fatigue, dizziness. That's what got me. You can have fainting, cold, pale, clammy skin. Normally when you're hot, like your skin is hot. It should be hot and wet, right? Because you're sweating. It should be warm and sweating. When you get heat exhaustion, it starts to get clammy, it starts to get cool. Muscle cramps, fast but weak pulse. Probably you're losing cardiac output. Vision changes, nausea, vomiting, and headache. So that's heat exhaustion. So if you're out in the heat, and I know I've had this more than once. I remember when I was playing sports, sometimes like it'd be really hot, and like my vision would start to
for sure
fade a little bit.
Or if you like sit down to like breathe and you stand back up.
Yeah. So if
that
you
happened
start
to me yesterday.
If you start to get those symptoms, you need to be careful because you are starting to overtax your body's ability to keep you cool, and you want to treat that to prevent it from going on to heat stroke. So obviously, number one factor or number one thing to do if you feel like you get heat exhaustion is get out of the heat.
Yes.
Even getting to shade makes a big difference. Obviously, the best would be getting into some air conditioning.
Yeah.
Other things, drink water. Make sure you're hydrated. Drink water or sports drink. Loosen any restrictive or excessive clothing. And then one of the best things you can do to cool yourself down is to get a cool, wet cloth and put on you or use a cool bath.
The one thing I do whenever I get super overheated at my gym is I take off my shoes and my socks. I don't know why, but it always makes me feel so much like
I
cooled
agree
off.
with that. Like I know when I go running and like I get done, it's like my feet are just like on fire.
Yeah. Dude, I think you release a lot of heat from your feet.
I think I read somewhere, and this may be like an urban myth or it may be true, that a lot of heat is released through your head.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
That's why you wear like little hats, like
when
beanies.
It's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it's cold, yeah. Okay, if you do not treat your heat exhaustion, you could go on to heat stroke. This is a severe medical emergency that requires immediate medical attention because it can quickly cause both brain and vital organ damage.
Yeah.
And there is a strict definition for heat stroke, unlike heat exhaustion, which doesn't have a strict definition. Heat stroke is when the body's core temperature gets above 104 degrees Fahrenheit. And for all our friends watching that might be from Europe or Canada, that would be 40 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
It has potential for very severe symptoms, and they are slightly different than heat exhaustion, so it's important to know the difference. Skin becomes hot but dry. Your body's ability to sweat has
just goes
ceased,
away.
And you stop sweating, and then you're really in danger because you're going to continue to gain that heat. Your pulse becomes very rapid and strong as your cardiac output starts to drop. You have confusion, unconsciousness, hallucinations, slurred speech, and then moves on to seizure and coma, which obviously are not things that you want to have.
No.
So, recognize the symptoms of heat stroke, very important, because in addition to all those things that you would normally do, which is get to a cooler place and potentially put in a cool bath or cool cloths, because a person in heat stroke will not necessarily be able to do that themselves.
Yeah.
Like they're going to need someone to help them or they're going to die. Before you do all that, the very first thing you'd want to do obviously is
Call 911.
Call 911. Yeah, absolutely. Call 911, get EMS involved. Other things to remember, if you got somebody that's in heat stroke and they're unconscious, you do not want to try to give them like fluids by mouth.
Right.
Because they can absolutely aspirate. Then you're dealing with a whole nother set of problems.
CPR.
The other thing to remember with heat stroke, which is it's a very smart thing and something that I didn't necessarily think of off the top of my head, you don't want to try to give those people anti-fever medications like acetaminophen, Tylenol, aspirin, because they can potentially cause more damage because the body's in a weakened state, and they can actually cause way more damage than they can potentially bring down the fever, which is not going to happen.
It's interesting. I wonder how big the gap is from like heat exhaustion to heat stroke. Like, where's that?
Yeah, it's a great question, because to say that, you'd probably have to know, like, is there like a concrete definition of heat exhaustion? Well,
and there's not.
Not really. I mean, with heat stroke, it's like, okay, body temperature 104. It's not like heat exhaustion is 101. I mean, at least there's no criteria out there that is established. I think for heat exhaustion, it's like when you start to get those symptoms and you start to feel
that's
off,
like your sign that you just need to chill out.
You need to chill out. If you start getting dizzy, headaches, you start to feel unwell and it's hot, you need to change your situation.
Yeah.
And you need to start cooling off, because people die of heat stroke.
Yeah, so it's the people that ignore those signs that's
once again why education is
yeah.
important. You hear something like this and you just keep it in the back of your mind. It's like, oh, okay, when these things start to hit, like, my body's actually a little bit in trouble. I need to take care of myself.
Yeah, luckily whenever I stood up too fast, it was at the end of a workout, so I was already done.
Yeah. Some of that could have been for you. It could have been a vasovagal effect.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably is multifactorial, what's heat and that, but when you are really straining yourself and you stand up too quick, you can get like a vasovagal where like your blood vessels dilate and you just get like a little drop in your blood pressure.
Yeah, I did that yesterday and I was like, I'm gonna sit back down.
I know for a fact that when I played sports, I had a couple times where it was like super hot out, and like I started to get that little kind of cone vision, and I'm like, whoa,
sure.
Because like once again, I was stupid as a kid and probably didn't think, I need to hydrate myself.
Yeah, I'm gonna live forever.
Yeah, it's amazing I made it past my teenage years. So, all right, I think that is all the time that we have for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this 100th episode of our show. We really do appreciate it. We are going to keep putting out content, and please let us know if you have any topics that you'd like us to talk about on the next episode of Nip Talk.
Bye.
Bye.